Greetings and welcome to the Sustaining the Herd podcast brought to you by Agri-Services and Engineering of Raymond, Nebraska. I'm your host, Andrew Wadle, and I'm joined in the studio as usual with my co-host, Brock Vitek.
Hey there, Andrew.
How you doing, Brock? You sounded much better compared to the last episode where you kind of sounded like the Marlboro Man. You kind of look like the Marlboro Man, but you sounded like him too.
Yeah, but believe it or not, I quit smoking since our last episode.
Yeah, you have to start to quit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, hey, good to see you, Brock. And welcome back to our past listeners, our existing listeners. We really appreciate the feedback we get from you. You know, being 49 episodes deep, you know, we, believe it or not, we have thousands of downloads. And so people are really kind of picking up on and enjoying some of the content that we're offering and finding useful the content as they go about their lives in sustainability in animal agriculture. But, you know, we're not just about sustainability in animal agriculture. We're about all sustainability, right, Brock?
Absolutely.
And so what does sustainability mean to Setchi Agri-Services and Engineering? Well, the first thing it means is probably what the first thing comes to mind, and that is protecting air and water. It's keeping contaminants out of the air that we breathe and the water that we drink. And so that's what we most often think about sustainability. The second part of sustainability is doing more with less, resource efficiency. That is a very, very important part of sustainability. And agriculture is a shining star example of always getting better and always doing more with less. And the last part of sustainability is business sustainability. And that is, how do we continue to develop agricultural businesses and enterprises that are strong and thriving so that businesses and people and families are compelled to continuing to do what they do in agriculture, and that is feed and clothe and maybe even fuel the world. So with that, let's just kind of get right into our topic today. Go for it, Brock.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Well, to all of our past or existing listeners, this topic may not be completely new to you, as we've hit on certain aspects of it in the past, and you'll probably find us referring to some past episodes. And for our new listeners and everyone for that matter, today we will dig into considerations for project development, especially as we look at anaerobic digestion projects, which many of you know, Andrew and I spend a lot of time working on anaerobic digestion projects.
Yeah, and Brock, right now, the outlook for anaerobic digestion is kind of grim. There's a lot of headwinds facing the industry, but boy, oh boy, for an industry facing a lot of headwinds, there are still a lot of projects moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the height of the mountain of work on our desks lately is a testament to the fact that there are still some projects moving forward. And although the markets may be grim, I do think that when project developers and all project stakeholders look at opportunities through a realistic lens and look at the different aspects of projects that we'll talk about today, that they are able to find some good in the grim. So let's see if we can help our industry partners do that today. And, you know, Andrew, there are several aspects of these projects, several considerations, rather, I should say, to stick with our theme here. And, I would like to just start at the beginning in terms of the beginning of a project. Something that we've talked about before, but I'd like to cover again is project feasibility. And their feasibility in a few ways. Technical, of course, thinking about the manure feedstock, the digester technology that's selected for a project. Then there's economic feasibility of a project. And just asking the question of whether or not does this project seem practical. A solid, technically feasible project is a strong foundation for an economically feasible project. That is, if the design and the engineering and the technology all make sense and seem to work, that gets us well on our way to having a project that can be profitable once it is up and running. Because if a project's not profitable, it's not going to be a project for very long. So yeah, that's absolutely important. And This might dip back into the technical a bit, but I just like to give kind of like the gut check on a project as well, the practicality test. Does this make sense? Does this feel right?
Yeah.
And I know you've been a part of a lot of projects over the years. Do you have any advice for project developers and project stakeholders when it comes to just giving a project the quick practicality test, even after we've done a deep technical dive and run the numbers on the financials in terms of, does this make sense? Does it fit the livestock operation well, or is this project going to take so many truckloads of manure that even though the numbers work, we're not going to be able to find that many trucks to haul it all? For example, just any advice on that?
Yeah, the gut check. We do a lot of things in life by gut and and experience, and and this could very well be taken as some bias, but I always feel as though the projects that are more successful have a really good underpinning or support from ag people, because they understand the system. We talk a lot about the system. There was a time when digesters were failing all over the place. We're going back 20 years ago. It's because people thought of the digester system as being the tank that's receiving the manure, whereas now we are defining the system that goes all the way out to the road or to the injection point. Yeah. And there are a lot of people that fit into that system. Now, although I must say, personally, I think that having ag people on your team help augment or help give you a better chance of success. On the other hand, a lot of these systems that are going in now are successful because you have people coming in from the oil and gas side of things. And so the oil and gas people might be saying, well, those projects 20 years ago were failing because, we didn't have oil and gas people, part of the team. And I think that two things. One, from a gut check standpoint, I like having ag people on the team because they're going to point out things when it comes to compatibility of the dairy or feedlot as it relates to anaerobic digestion. But then it's really important beyond that to have a well-rounded team, because I will say ag people and ag people alone are not readily capable of executing successful projects because they are the system, and I can't emphasize enough, the systems are so complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes a team of everyone needed to make it happen. Shouldn't get heavy just in one certain area of expertise, whether that's ag or oil and gas or financial side of things, whatever it may be. Absolutely. Yeah. So just some things for our listeners to keep in mind as they're considering developing projects. So let's say, as we're continuing to walk through our project development process flow diagram, perhaps, let's say we have a project that is technically and economically feasible and it passes the gut check. What's next after that? Probably permitting and some initial design work or preliminary design.
And even a little bit before that, you would be selecting a vendor. The developer would come with a vendor, and I think that's part and parcel to. You need to know that also when it comes to integrating the technology with the farming operation. So at some point in there, you would have selected a vendor, and those vendors, preferably the vendor, has some experience in executing successful projects.
Yes, that'd be the anaerobic digestion technology vendor.
That's correct.
The tanks and process engineering, I'll call the digester proper, the meat and potatoes of the project. Yep.
That's right.
So let's say project appears to be feasible. Vendor is selected. We're ready to start on some design work and getting all the permits that are required.
Yep.
So
and
we know.
I was just going to say, Brock, we're just going to jump ahead and say, we part of looking at the feasibilities too is we go from the beginning immediately to the end.
Yes, we begin with the end in mind.
Meaning that, we need to be assured that with this anaerobic digestion process, we have the means to apply the manure after the fact. There is an incredible misconception that anaerobic digestion makes manure handling easier. It simplifies manure handling. And the answer is maybe, right?
Maybe. Depends on how different it is from what the livestock producer's doing today.
Right. And it's certainly not making nutrients go away.
No. A pound of nutrient in is by and large a pound of nutrient out.
Yeah. So so you've asked me a question, Brock, and I've weaseled around answering it, but now
that's fine.
Now I'm prepared to answer it. So
Once
we get the technology squared away, we've got the compatibility squared away, we're content with we can handle the digestate. The next step in developing a successful project is taking a realistic look at the permitting.
Yeah. And we know from our experience that can get quite complex on certain projects and certain locations.
Yep.
Depending which state and which county you're in, we're based in Nebraska. I'll just give a brief Nebraska example. Some counties may not require local permitting for a digester project. Others might require a conditional use permit. And that involves submitting an application, attending public hearings, presenting to the county board at those public hearings, hearing comments from the public, quite a process. And that may be more difficult in some counties, in some states than others. So just something to be aware of. And there could be the chance that a local county permit is not approved. Well, that doesn't mean a project is dead on the spot. Maybe you just need to look at a slightly different site nearby to where you are that might satisfy some of the county board's concerns or the public's concerns that might be influencing the county's decision, for example.
Yes. And just to be clear, folks, that the things that we're talking about with permitting, we're going to give you the standard disclaimer. Check your local jurisdictions because it is literally different everywhere that we go. There's a lot of similarities, but just by saying a lot or mostly, when you're talking about a $100 million project, that's not good enough. So please research your jurisdiction, your locale.
Yeah, for sure. And the process is usually somewhat similar. The process can differ quite a bit depending on your locale as well. And, I say there are county by county, state by state differences. Well, different location within a county could even be different because, one site, you might be close enough to a municipality that the city zoning ordinance might come into place to where if you were maybe a mile further out from town, you only have to do county zoning. So it really just depends where you are. Like Andrew said, depending on local jurisdiction. So you cannot do enough due diligence on looking into what permits are all required and making sure that you are covered there, because you would hate for some little administrative matter like not realizing you needed a local approval to kill a $100 million project when you're maybe halfway through construction. And then someone says, wait, did you look into this? Oh, we didn't know about that. You do not want that to happen.
Yeah. So let's just go through, Brock, again, all situations, all jurisdictions are different, but let's just go through some of the heavier hitters.
Yeah, so I think this is probably more state permitting.
Let's talk state permitting.
We talked county or local permitting. I think we really covered that for the most part. Could be a couple things I might add in later. But state permitting is where the heavy hitters come in. And once again, have to give the disclaimer Andrew gave for local permitting. Check your state regulations and jurisdictions. It is not always the same everywhere. It's most likely different. But we know most places for an anaerobic digestion project, there are certain permits that you will need. One of them being an air quality permit. Probably need a air construction permit and then an air operating permit once the project is up and running. And air permitting is no small feat at all. Andrew, could you tell us a little bit about what goes into air permitting?
Well, air permitting really takes a look at all the emissions coming from a plant. Just because an anaerobic digester is being installed and we are capturing biogas, there are still compounds that are put into the air by way of of anaerobic digestion and an anaerobic digestion process. And that could be something as hydrogen sulfide from gas cleanup, or if we're having to burn gas in the event that gas cleanup is down. We have things like hydrogen sulfide emissions. We could potentially have engines and boilers that have emissions. And so what an air permit does is they look at the ambient air conditions at the site, and it looks at the emissions that are going to come as a result of the project. And using very, very complex models, they basically model how the air disperses across the site, or the pollutants disperse across the site, and really just gives some affirmation that the process isn't impairing the air quality in a location.
Very well said. Yeah, and the reason I make such a big deal about it, or say this is a very important one, is that developers need to understand the potential timeline for air permitting. If a project is of large enough size and will produce over a certain threshold of emissions, the state regulatory authority could, by law, take up to a year to review the permit application and have some back and forth dialogue with you as the developer and your engineers of record on technical questions. So, I mean, it can take some time, so don't think that you can necessarily come in and get a project permitted quickly. Sometimes that may be possible, but I wouldn't count on it. The heavy hitters like air permit can take a lot of time to first compile the application and do the required engineering and level of design needed for that, as well as the financial investment to get to that point, and the potentially long lead review time with the state regulating authority. So just some considerations there. Another heavy hitter is wastewater permitting of some sort, depending once again which state you're in and what the details and business arrangement of your project are. This could be more of what we would call an industrial wastewater permit, or in some states for some projects, this could potentially be permitted via the contributing livestock operations confinement animal production permit, which is more of an ag or livestock version of a wastewater permit, because there's processed wastewater from manure involved there. There's some certain considerations that determine whether your wastewater or the livestock permit. We won't get into those today, but either way, quite a bit of detailed engineering design goes into preparing that permit application as well, and several months of review time there too. So a heavy hitter indeed.
Yeah, and basically that's going to be, maybe design documents maybe to the 60% design level of anything that touches manure. And so oftentimes it's required to get that process rolling, because everything needs to be done right away. There's a need to get that process rolling, the development of that permit, even before the design details are available. And so I think so that just shines a light on how we really need to have a realistic timeline on what it takes to get all these things to come together. It just does not happen overnight.
Yeah, and some of these not the permits, but some of the design and engineering efforts that go into these permits might apply to more than one permit. So I think it's important to have a comprehensive project schedule where you can see where the certain stop gates are, and knowing that, okay, we get to, X% design, we know that's required for permit A and permit B, and just really laying out that roadmap, both of submittal timelines and progress timelines for the work that needs to be undertaken to get to those submittal milestones. It's a bit of maybe a Charlotte's Web of related tasks when it comes to project permitting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Another one at the state level, oftentimes that relates to something Andrew mentioned earlier, would be land application permits. Sometimes this might be like a sub part of the wastewater permit. Other times in other states, it might be its own standalone permit. But in order to land apply, that is take the digestate products coming out of the digester, both liquid and solid, you are required to have a permit to agronomically apply those to land as a fertilizer or soil amendment for crop production. And, Andrew talked about getting out in front of nutrient management, making sure it seems feasible in terms of having enough acres to apply those nutrients, that it's practical, that the logistics of it are practical to haul or pump or whatever it looks like to convey those digestate products to their end destinations. Well, permitting is required for some of that. So make sure that one is taken care of as well. And, Andrew, I mentioned earlier, there might be a couple more local ones I'll mention. Well, I think now might be the time. So we talked about the county permitting. There are a couple others. One of them would be water rights or water permitting. We're not talking wastewater, but like, for example, here in Nebraska, we have natural resource districts across the state to manage surface water and groundwater. And you can't just go drill a well of whatever size you want, wherever you want. You have to get approval to do that. And, other states have their own management systems, some more local like Nebraska, others at the state level. But if the project will require XYZ gallons per minute, 24/7, 365, it's probably important to get out in front of that early on to make sure that you can get the water allocation that you need, whether it's drilling a new well or maybe not only drilling a new well, but needing to purchase water rights from someone else or purchase land that has a center pivot on it and retire that pivot and transfer those water rights to the new well. This I could model a lot of scenarios. I won't get any further into it than that, but want people to realize that water rights are another heavy hitter and something to get out in front of. And once again, regulated differently in each state and maybe even differently in different areas across states. So can't leave that one out.
Yep. And, if we were just to take a step away from permitting for a moment. I'll
permit that.
Oh, I appreciate that, Brock. I appreciate being permitted. I permit you to permit me.
Very good.
So, under the category of just all the little things that add time, we're making biogas, right? Well, it is not magically getting onto the grid. Oftentimes, we have, most projects are putting in a natural gas pipeline to get to an interconnect. And that comes with a whole host of challenges, especially once we start talking about crossing other people's lands, crossing railroads. And there's many, many wrinkles and twists and turns that go into adding time to a project, just in order to get a gas pipeline landed to an interconnect point.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you're crossing people's land depending on project specifics. I'm just throwing a number out there. Maybe this is a little on the high side. I'm not sure. You could potentially cross 20 landowners' land to put your pipeline in, depending where you are in the world. And it takes time to go and make that happen and get those permits and do those land transactions and lawyers involved, et cetera.
Yep.
It's no small feat.
Yep. And then another thing. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So, another thing, just little thing, oftentimes these projects will involve a land transaction, right? And so a parcel of land will be subdivided from a larger parcel, which would then in turn be leased or sold or something to the digestion project. And now we're going to have surveys and title searches and things like that. That can be, they could be done in an afternoon. But on the other hand, they could be tied up for months and months, just depending upon ownership issues and things of that nature.
Yeah, while we're on the topic of little things that can delay and extend timelines, I think all these little things are actually big things, important things to talk about. Just a couple of others that come to mind for me. One would be, you mentioned title searches and surveys. Another one would be kind of related to the surveys, geotechnical exploration.
Oh, yes.
To look into whether or not, see how suitable the soil is for foundations for large tanks and structures. That can take some time. And the results from that could come back saying that maybe this site isn't very good for foundations. So you have to spend more money to make it suitable for foundations. Yeah.
And there's definitely engineering solutions for all those things. But again, they take a lot of time. And, we're not talking about, putting down a feed pad or a simple reception pit for a manure system. We're talking about huge tanks, very, huge diameter tanks, tall tanks that, just can't be supported by just traditional subsurface, subsurface site excavation of a granular fill pad, right?
Yeah. Might be some heavy subsurface construction that needs to take place in order to support those tanks, so they're not quite literally sinking into the ground 5 years from now.
That's right.
Couple of other things that seem little sometimes and can turn into big things. There are different evaluations that need to take place in terms of like a historical search to make sure that there is no historically significant site or artifacts present on the project site. Is this like an ancient burial ground or something like that? It, might sound a bit tongue in cheek, but that could actually happen. So you need to, do a desktop survey, I would call it, with this a lot of times with the State Historical Society or some organization like that to make sure that you're not disturbing any archaeological sites.
Right.
Another one would be wildlife and ecological surveys. Is the project site potentially a nesting ground for an endangered bird species or other wildlife species?
I had a project stop for a newt. I had a project stop for a newt once.
A newt?
The newts, yeah.
Oh no, not the newts.
Endangered newts. So did
the project proceed after careful consideration of the newts? After
careful consideration, it did proceed.
Yeah, I hear swift foxes can be a bit tricky here in the Midwest as well. I know those come up on some projects, and some birds. As funny as it might sound, talking about the newts, it's a real thing, and you have to be prepared for it. Yeah. So just some more considerations that could add to project timelines, and that can certainly add more work and more expense if you're not careful as well. So yeah, I think we covered a lot of the potential little things that could turn into big things in a hurry. Andrew, can you think of any others before we move on?
No, I think we've got most of them. And again, we encourage you to check with your local jurisdiction or design professional, because there could be more, there could be less.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm going to jump around a bit here as we talk about little things. I just thought of one more thing that relates to permitting. And I think it's important for our listeners who do not work in agriculture or specifically in livestock production to understand. So if that's all right, let's jump back to permitting for a moment. And the topic I'd like to get into for a bit is setbacks and separation distances. So a lot of listeners might be familiar with this. Some have maybe never heard of it. So once again, depending on your state and your local jurisdictions, there are likely minimum separation distances required between a project and neighboring properties. If there's just a cornfield next door, there's probably some type of right-of-way setback that you need to be maybe 50 to 100 feet from the property line. That's not what I'm really talking about. I'm talking about residences, churches, schools, and places of business. So if there is a residence, someone's home nearby the project, let's say that the regulatory separation distance is that you need to have a minimum of 2,000 feet. Just for example, that's one that we could see come up in practice between manure storage and a residence. Well, let's say that house is within 1,500 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a problem, but it's not necessarily a showstopper. A lot of jurisdictions, you can have that property owner sign a waiver saying that they are okay with the project, that they're acknowledging they're within the separation distance. They'll sign that and say it's okay to proceed here. But those are things you have to look into once again. Little things that could turn into big things, especially if the first time that, let's say that neighbor is a pretty reasonable person, they'd probably sign the waiver, not a problem. But let's say that a public meeting is the first time they ever hear about this project. That might not go over so well. Stay out in front of things. Go and talk to your neighbors beforehand and say, hey, here's what we're looking to do. If you don't already know them, get to know them, explain what you're doing, see if they'd be willing to sign the waiver and engage things from the beginning so that they're not hearing about this for the first time in a public meeting, or maybe a public meeting they didn't attend, but they're reading about it in the local newspaper and then they're really ticked off. Yeah. So just one other little thing that I thought of I wanted to add in there.
Yeah. Well, for sure. I think with all these permits, I think with most all business transactions, just transparency, I think ultimately is going to get you a lot farther as opposed to, surprising people with what your intentions are. And I think most people in agriculture are in such, always striving to be in such harmony with their neighbors. I'd like to think that's not that big of a lift. However, it also means that, in people in agriculture, when you're working with developers who aren't quite so familiar with the relationships and the interactions that go on, that they are made aware of how important it is that you maintain relationships with the local crop farmers and the local school teacher who owns a house, beside your property. And
and as a developer, you probably have the best of intentions. Let's say you understand that you need to have a waiver signed by the neighboring school teacher whose house is within the separation distance. It's great that you want to go talk to them and have a conversation and build a relationship. But before you do that, I would suggest talking to the dairy farmer that you're working with on this project, because chances are the dairy farmer already knows his or her neighbors pretty well. Right. May or may not have a good relationship with the neighbor, you don't know, but it's good to talk to that farmer first and find out, maybe especially if it's not a good relationship, because you could get run off the place. Who knows? So either way, just work with locals as much as you can. And really, I encourage developers to view your farmer as a key stakeholder and partner in the project. And I really believe most developers do that, but do not underestimate how helpful your farm partners can be in making a successful anaerobic digestion project. Yep. Cannot underscore Brock, that enough.
Yes, indeed. And so I guess as we kind of start to wrap up here, I'm going to put together here just kind of what I would consider to be just some of the things that I would consider to be the heavy hitters. If you take care of these,
sum up the heavy hitters.
If you take care of these things, you will be most likely to have a successful project. And the first one is the system. Understand that the system is not just the tanks and the gas cleanup system. The tank is the crop farmer 20 miles away that's taking the manure, and the gas line all the way out to the interconnect underneath the railroad, and every single thing in between. That is your system. Take responsibility for it. Own it from an intellectual standpoint. It is part of your, you need to be responsible for it. And part of understanding the system then is bringing in the team, because this is so complex and there's so many things involved, that you're bringing in a really diverse team of people, of specialists that know, and not one person knows having done a number of these projects, not one person knows every single aspect of this system. It takes a team, and the right team. The other part is your research and knowing things like, and understanding the permitting and having a realistic understanding of what it takes to get a permit and how long it takes to get a permit. It's not just going to happen overnight. And there are a lot of factors that are outside of your control. And that is at whatever speed the wheel turns, the wheel of government, say, or the wheel of the regulating authority turns, you are subject to that, and it will go no faster than what it's going to go. And then the last thing, looking at success, is what we just touched on, and that is transparent and letting the neighbors know, or letting everybody know within that system what you're looking to do, so that there are no surprises.
Yeah, and I think it's not only I'll add just a little to that last one, Andrew, not only as a developer letting people know what's going on and being transparent, but you mentioned the livestock producer, really strives to be a good neighbor as well. It's, I think, helping your farm partner to fully understand how this project integrates into their operation as well. Complete transparency is important there. And if you don't have answers to their questions, go and get answers. An example I want to highlight, and I keep going back to nutrient management, but right now that the dairyman or the feedlot producer has crop farmers they work with who provide feed for the cattle and also probably receive manure nutrients for land application. Well, maybe those are a solid, dry, spreadable, stackable product today. Well, what if this digester project's going to mean you're going to have tens of millions of gallons of slurry a year? It might not have much for solid products to be spread. Right. Farmers might be open to that, but that you need to get out in front of that conversation well ahead of time. So just another example of being transparent throughout the entire system, as you so eloquently put it, Andrew. It's the system does not stop at the property boundary of the digester site. It goes 20 miles down the road to the furthest field where manure is applied. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good. Well, I think you summed that up well. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you have, and I hope our listeners have too, as we've recapped a few things we've talked about in past episodes, and also, I think, given a fresh perspective on some considerations for project development here today as well.
Yeah, especially with margins being tighter than ever, that you've really got to get these right, and so hopefully we can help people avoid some pitfalls.
That's our goal. That's what we do. Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, I would like to thank all of our listeners, both new and returning, for choosing to spend a little time with Andrew and I here today. And I'd also like to mention that, as always, we'll be back with you again in a couple of weeks. But when we are back in a couple of weeks, it's going to be a big deal. You know why that is, Andrew?
I think we're about to go over the hill, Brock.
Yeah, we have a birthday coming up. Sustaining the Herd is turning, that's right, 50. Next episode will be number 50. Sustaining the Herd will be over the hill. Yeah. But
you know what? Let's not call it over the hill, though. Let's not call it over the hill, because we're going to keep on getting better.
I was just going to say, we're going to keep climbing and keep going.
Right.
It's
that's right.
Yeah, this is not going down, but we're hitting an important milestone nonetheless.
Right.
And we're really excited about that. And we have a fun episode coming for you then. So please tune in once again for that. And we look forward to being back with you again in a couple of weeks for that big milestone. And until then, thanks for joining the Herd today.